And I'll move us to the last slide that is really what we need for today. Okay, so starting from this, you can all see my slides. So what I want us to do, let me see if I have, I'm missing a few companies from here. That is a bit strange. So now it doesn't let me see my slides. Okay, interesting. So start presenting, let me, another one from here. Okay, guys, can you, so now you can all see my slides, right? Yeah. So what you have here is a number of companies. Okay, thank you very much. So there was a bit of a gap there. So there is a number of companies here. These are all companies which are active in the electricity, but usually not only electricity, but broadly in the energy sector around Europe. Some of them have a more international presence beyond Europe, but they're all companies which are very large, some of the largest energy companies in the world. They have a significant level of activity in electricity, and they have activities in more than one country. Many of them have in many countries, even beyond Europe. So they're Iberdrola, Ørsted, Endesa, ENGIE, RWE, EDF, NL, E.ON, Verbund, and Vattenfall. So what I want us to do is we're going to split in groups, and following that, we will spend a little bit of time within our groups to research quite in some level of detail what these companies are active in. So we'll try to understand which countries they're active in, what kind of portfolios they have, what kind of future investments they're planning for, what is their attitude towards sustainability, and so on, yeah? And what type of infrastructure they run in the countries that they have infrastructure. I'm doing this to help you understand a little bit what market players in the energy sector look like. I think it's quite an important exercise. It's not just for the sake of, for you, learning about a company, but it's a little bit more broadly for you to understand what companies in the electricity sector basically do. It's not so specific to your own company, but of course, each one of you in your own teams, we will be looking at one company specifically. So then we'll all come back together and we'll share a little bit of our results to see what is happening broadly in the energy sector in Europe, and a little bit beyond probably in some cases. So you're free to choose the company that you want to have, but we will probably need to find, maybe actually the best way is to see in which groups you are assigned. Let me see a little bit how I'm going to split you in groups. So we're here 50 people, something like that. Yeah, we're roughly 50 people. So if I make, how many companies do I have here? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So with 10 companies here, maybe what we'll do to keep this simple is that depending on your group number, you will select the company that fits your group number. Is that clear? So if you're group number 1, you will have Iberdrola. If you're group number 10, you will have Vattenfall. Does that make sense?
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay. So let's have a go, see how that plays out. So 10 here, automatic allocation, create groups. We've tested this last week, so hopefully this will be quite straightforward now. Open the groups.
Excuse me, Professor. I got out from the Teams app before and I just re-enter, so maybe I'm not in a team now.
Okay. Let me see if I can do anything clever here. So I will be trying to move you all to other teams. Let me see if I can do that. So it doesn't let me do it in any very straightforward way, but there must be a way. Let me see. There.
Can you hear me? Professor, can you hear me?
I cannot hear you very well. I can hear a voice, but I cannot hear you very well.
Oh, okay. How about now? I don't know what's the problem, but I think when you made the rules, we just, because you made the other meeting for us, we left this meeting. So I think now we are 8 people here in the class.
Yes, there doesn't seem to be a very good way to move you out of here.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So yeah, because I'm trying
now
to.
They know how they can join because the link is in the virtual, so they can join easily to the class.
Yeah, no, the main issue is how do I move people to groups right now? And I don't think there is any straightforward way.
Then you made room for us. We were 4. So I made a photo of it. And now I know that who is my group mate. But we were 4, not 5.
Yes, assign participants. So here it tells me that I only have 2 participants to assign that are not assigned apparently, and everybody else is assigned.
Now there is an option for me in this meeting, join room. I think this is the room that you made for us.
So can you join a room right now?
I think I can join there.
Okay, do that. Okay, if you can just do that, that will be the best.
I still cannot, Professor.
Okay. Let's see. So it does give me an option to move. So it shows me only 3 people that could be moved like that. So I see in this room right now, in the main room, we are 9. At least it shows me 9 people. So who is the person I'm hearing that's talking to me?
Petra Smaldore.
Petra, okay. Let me see. Sorry, Petra. If I can't find a way to do it manually, because automatically, it shows me that you should be in room 4 here. But yeah, for a reason, it doesn't let you access it from what you say. So what I'll do is I'll unassign you and then try to assign you again. But it's very clunky. I've never seen anything so silly before. That should be so easy. In every other platform I use, this is a piece of cake. It just happens automatically. Okay, so is everybody assigned now?
Professor, I'm in this room still. I don't know.
Okay.
I was supposed to be in another one.
That is quite crazy. Sorry for all these delays. It's really silly. Because to me it shows that you're already assigned somewhere, and it just won't let you join probably.
No, actually, no. I was having a hard time to connect, and then the chat, and then this room, and the other one. I was.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, are you all back? Most of you seem to be coming back now. Good. So we're all back now, isn't it? Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Okay. So we've had 10 teams. Hopefully work wasn't too onerous. So shall we make a start? Does anybody wants to have a go? With Berdola maybe for the first company. Hello. Have we got a speaker from Iberdola who wants to get on the mic and tell us a few things about what you guys found?
Yeah, that's our team. Alfred is going to speak.
Yes, I'll try. It's lagging a lot right now, so I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you very well. Go for it.
Okay, awesome. I'll try to turn on my camera too.
So I will ask everyone else to keep their microphones on mute so we avoid too much feedback. But yeah, whoever is speaking, yes, put your mic on. And if you can also your camera, that would be great.
Okay, can you hear me and see me? Yes.
All good,
no.
Go for it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so Iberdrola is, it's actually a pretty large company. It has many subsidiaries and itself, it also produces power itself, not just via subsidiaries, mainly in Spain, UK, USA, Brazil, Mexico, and Germany, Portugal, Italy, and France. So in Europe and in Northern America, and in Brazil too. They are the world's third electricity utility by market capitalization. So it's a very, very large company. Yes, we said it generates hydro, coal with coal too, gas, but mainly it generates electricity through a lot of with a lot of renewable energy sources. It's the largest producer of wind energy in Spain, which produces quite a bit of wind energy, and other countries too. And it also has solar panels. I don't know if anyone else wants to add something, but they are very committed on circular economy and getting the renewable side of the production up at least by 50% by 2025. And yeah, so they are very committed to sustainability, and they work on both production and transmission and distribution of the energy, since they are such a large company. And
okay, that sounds like plenty of information.
Yeah.
I think that's useful as a start. If anybody else wants to add something from the team, I'm happy to hear. Otherwise, we can also move to the next company, but up to you guys if you have something more to add.
I think that was pretty good. Just to add the fact that they have this really good structured renewable or sustainability reports and commitments and policies public to everyone, like in the internet. And as Alfred was saying, that they have a really large network of solar panels, mostly in Mexico and yeah, in North America also.
Sorry, I was on mute. It had to happen. So thank you for them presenting Iberdrola. Shall we move to the next company, please? So that could be somebody from Ørsted. Can you guys talk to us a little bit about what you found for Ørsted?
Yes, I can speak. So basically, we found that Ørsted is a Danish multinational power company, and it's the largest power company in Denmark, and it's a very big producer of offshore wind power. So it's operating in Europe, in the US, in the UK, in the Netherlands, and in Germany. And so that's for Europe, and then in the US. And they are very committed to sustainability. In fact, so they are accounting for the 29% of global installed capacity of wind power, and they produce roughly the 88% of their energy from renewable resources in general. And so they operate not just with offshore wind power, but also with hydrogen projects. And they are thinking about they are planning to reach net zero generation by 2025 and no carbon emissions by 2040. And in terms of their investments, so they are basically quadrupling their investments towards reaching that goal. So they invested 57 billion of US dollars to reach this production of clean energy, and so they are investing towards these projects of installing offshore wind farms and production of energy through hydrogen, and so that's what we found, and that basically their infrastructure is they are basically producers of energy, and that the distribution is through other companies. So they are basically producers. I don't know if someone wants to add something more from my group.
No, I think it was quite good. I think that's everything we found, basically.
Okay, that's very useful. Thank you, Elena. Shall we now move to the next company? That was Endesa.
Yeah, so Endesa is a wholly owned subsidiary of Enel Green Power, so the Italian Enel company. And what's significant about that is that it runs into some regulatory barriers with the Spanish government, given that obviously the Spanish government doesn't want a foreign company controlling its grid, and so the Spanish government has to approve all projects that Endesa puts forth. But it's very impressive that they've been able to transition. They're now, I'll put the numbers in the chat, but now the vast majority of their power, 85%, is produced by renewable sources, and they're planning on decarbonizing completely by the year 2050. And one interesting initiative they have is actually they're not only responsible for supply, but they're also trying to augment demand through constructing a series of electric charging stations. So to grow the demand from electric vehicles for their products. And they're mainly based in the Iberian Peninsula. They also have operations in Africa as well. So I don't know if you guys can see, I posted in, but they sell a lot of electricity to Portugal. And then also, if you see we have a generation map too, where their primary points of generation are, but they're concentrated on the French border, and then right above, they have a lot of wind assets just north of the Portuguese border as well. So they're able to sell a lot of electricity across borders. What else? They have, so in the, one question we have with the, green transition is what happens to those workers who are currently employed in, carbon sectors, right, who work at a coal-fired plant. And one thing that Endesa's made clear is that they're not going to lay off any employees. So one of their interesting initiatives is actually, retraining engineers who used to work in coal in natural gas plants to be able to work their wind and solar assets. So I don't know if anyone else on my team, wants to speak up, but they're really committed to the green transition, and we've seen so far they've made pretty remarkable progress in catalyzing the reduction of their emissions footprint.
Sorry, I was again on mute. Thank you for that. I'm pointing it out for all of us that there's a kind of recurring thread a little bit that is about the transition, and some of these companies are already making it quite clear that there is a transition element in their work. We will be seeing a little bit more of that as we go on with your presentations. But since we've already gone through Ørsted with the previous group and Endesa now, it's to mention that quite often Ørsted is mentioned as the company that has managed to actually, successfully complete the transition, move from being a fossil fuels company to a completely renewable energy type of company. So that's something to keep in mind, that it's not, let's say, a goal that is impossible to reach or anything like that, but it's something which, some companies have already managed, and there are other companies which are on a trajectory to achieve. Like I've said in some of the groups before, some companies still are, of course, in denial, but that's a different story. We will be pointing out when that happens. I think none of the companies that you have in your collection are in very strong denial. So we have a good case studies here to see. So finishing now with Endesa, I'm looking for, do we have somebody who wants to speak about ENGIE?
Yes, so ENGIE is operates mainly in France. I mean, it is a French corporation, whatever. It operates through Europe, Indonesia, North and Latin America. It's the biggest, it has actually the biggest natural gas distribution in Europe, with approximately 200,000 kilometers only in France. It has signed a partnership with Amazon in 2019, in which they have established a production of 2,000 gigawatts of renewable energies. And in the medium long term, they're focusing on green hydrogen production, and they have said that they're orienting around 7 billion of euros towards the transition toward renewable energies, and mainly that. I don't know. They are both distributors and producers. So from wind production, solar, and biomass. That's it, mainly. I don't know if the others have anything to say.
Anybody else from that team having anything else to add? No.
Maybe
Somebody, yeah.
we can also say that they are going to use their infrastructure, the gas line infrastructure, to transport renewable gases. Maybe it's gonna be hydrogen, but of course we don't have technical details about it. And for us, it is like risk management strategy. Maybe they're going to invest in hydrogen and replace natural gas with it in the future, because they already have the infrastructure. And that's all.
That's a good point. Thank you both. So that is to say, indeed, Engie is less of a production company and more of a distribution company in many countries. It has that's where its main presence seems to be. And also they do a lot of work with large industrial customers. So much less on the retail market and much more on serving significant customers. Now, an important thing for most of us to have a thing there on is that indeed some companies in the energy sector own and operate transmission assets that can be cables when it's electricity, but it can also be things like let's say pipes for gas that have been traditionally been for gas. There is a lot of rhetoric about these pipelines being used in the future for hydrogen. So if we reach a point where we stop using natural gas, could we be producing a lot of hydrogen with renewable energy sources or so on, and then using the same pipelines to have that hydrogen being transported across countries or across regions and so on? It is something that lots of companies are looking on. It is very tricky as a business because hydrogen tends to make pipelines relatively brittle, depending on what material these pipelines are made of. But quite often, pipelines are not suitable for hydrogen moving. Yeah? It's not the same thing. So companies tend to claim that they can do a lot of it, but it's not always very easy. There is significant leakage of hydrogen from these pipelines because hydrogen is a very tiny molecule. So it tends to be able to actually escape a lot of the pipeworks that we have in present. So it's quite an interesting one. I mean, we'll see how that plays out. It's still early days for that, but we will have more information as we play along. So can we now move on to RWE, please?
Yes. We found out that RWE is a German company. It is based in Essen, but it operates worldwide, like for example in the Asia Pacific, in the EU, but also in the USA. And it is a company that does not retail. It does not sell to private to households, for example, but just to it mostly to industrial customer. So unlike other companies in the list, for example, and its strategy, it's instead of reducing carbon emissions by 62% by 2040. No, I mean reduce carbon emission by 62 from 2012 to 2022 and become carbon neutral by 2040, and 110 million tons of carbon emission has been reduced since 2012. It uses different types of primary sources, like for example, biomass, sun, wind, coal, gas, nuclear power, water, and lignite. But there's a section in the website that stresses the importance of hydrogen. It's very explaining, I think, because it also explains the difference between green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and gray hydrogen, and it's points out also the commitment of the firm to switching to green hydrogen, and to support the transition to net zero. There's also investments. There's a section dedicated to private equity investments. And there's also a guidelines for people who wants to invest in the transition. So we think it's very transparent, the policy of the firm. And what's more, there's a key data. There's graph with key data about the firm in which there are figures compared from the year 2019 and 2020. And for example, I noticed that the quantity of energy sold in 2020 is way lower, a little bit lower than the amount of energy sold in 2019. And I think this could be because of COVID. But the financial assets have grown from 2019 to 2020. So this sector, this branch of the firm has increased over the year. And I don't know if my colleagues want to add something.
Silence. So maybe they don't want to say anything else. Maybe you covered everything very well, as you did. Thank you very much.
I think it's fine.
It does happen with quite a large number of companies that they do not necessarily want to be involved with the with private customers, with households, as your colleague has just mentioned for RWE. And again, that depends on the specific region a company is in, because sometimes these companies will set up subsidiaries which will be dedicated to retail. But it's also the case that some of these companies, will not want to do anything with the retail market, and they will just sell to other companies, which will be retailers, and sell on their behalf. So it does happen a lot. There are different roles for different types of activities, depending on where companies feel their main strengths are and their main market advantage might be. So that is what we're finding for RWE. RWE is one of the companies that has been quite heavily affected in Germany by the policy to shut down nuclear power stations. It was one of the companies that was forced to shut down existing nuclear power stations much before the end of the normal lifespan. So quite a significant change that they have had to go through. So that's an interesting story there for RWE. So moving on, can we have somebody that looked at EDF, please?
Yes, here I am. Good morning.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did a research about EDF Energy, which is a French multinational electric utility company, and they are specialized in electricity from engineering to distribution. So they cover all the process of the electricity market. They operate in Europe, in South America, North America, Asia, in the Middle East and Africa. And in 2009, they became the largest producer of electricity in the world. The company's operations includes electricity generation and distribution, power plant design, construction and dismantling, and energy trading and transport. So they do almost everything. They're really active in power generation technologies such as nuclear power, hydropower, marine energies, wind power, solar energy, biomass, geothermal energy, fossil fired energy. but as they one of their aim is to reach the world to become the world leader in low carbon electricity generation, they have focused more on a mix of energy sources, which is based on nuclear energy and renewable energies. In nuclear energy, it represents the 88% of the total electricity production in France, while worldwide they are like it is the 76.5%. For the renewable energies, they consider hydroelectric, solar, wind, and also the wind, which is both onshore and offshore wind power. Then they also with the other types of renewable energies are, but in minor measure. There is marine energy, geothermal energy, recovered energy, and biomass energy. The group carbon intensity is now 80 times lower than the sector's average worldwide, and 5 times lower than the European average. This worldwide, while in France, where they are they're based, they are 17 times less than the European average for the sector. I don't know if there is something more to add, but I think that's what we found.
That sounds good to me. Anybody else from the team wants to mention anything else, or are we all happy?
I just want to add that EDF Energy is the first producer of renewable electricity in Europe. So yeah, they are trying to use renewable energy as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, they're mostly known for their nuclear energy portfolio, but it is true that they have been growing their renewable energy portfolio quite significantly over the last few years. And, you know, they do see themselves as a zero carbon company, probably before most other companies did, because they were they were never extremely active, you know, with fossil fuels. Fossil fuels were never a very big part of their investment strategy. Okay, that's very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move now to Enel. Who has done Enel? Can we have somebody who can speak about Enel? Enel, anyone?
Yes, so Enel is a...
Hello, thank you.
Hello, sorry. Enel is a very big, it's a multinational company based in Italy, and it's present in 31 countries. So it's active in every single continent. And we can see that varying on its location, it acts both as a producer, a distributor, and even a retailer. So for example, in Australia, it operates mainly as a generator, as an energy producer, and it does so with renewable energy. So it has implemented, at least from what they said on the website, the largest photovoltaic power plant in the country. Whereas in Germany, for example, it only operates as a retailer and as a distributor. And and then I'll let my other team members talk about strategy and etc.
Okay, so Enel has quite a number of product offerings in their portfolio. So they cater to wholesale to retail market. They also do something that they call the Smart City Drive, which is an innovation that they're doing to tap into the electric vehicle market to provide, charging points for cities and municipalities in order to cater to the anticipated, rise in the demand for electric vehicles. They hope to achieve the zero carbon or the full energy transition by 2027. So they don't see themselves using coal past the year 2027. Right now, they have a number of renewable offerings and new technologies. They're particularly exploring the integration of multiple technologies in their power plants. So they are, combining hydrogen technology with energy storage and all of that, sorts of renewables to generate their power. I think that's what I have. I don't know if someone else wants to say something else.
Yeah, so we know that from the point of view of investments, from the strategic plan of Enel, we know that the Enel Group's leadership have a journey towards becoming a full digital company, able to implement two business models. The traditional one that is called the ownership, where you can say that digital platforms are a business enhancer supporting investment profitability, and the other model is the stewardship, which catalyze investments of third party in partnership with Enel, or where platforms are a business generator. And from the first one business model, we can say that more than a half of investment is dedicated to global power generation, which will lead to an overall renewable capacity. And so the group will accelerate decarbonizations. And another important feature of this model is the fact that around 43% is expected to be investment in infrastructure and networks. And the other part, the remaining amount relates to customers. So the fact that will be the elimination of regulated tariffs, mainly in Italy, and also the electrification of energy consumption trends. And for the second model, so the stewardship, we can say that the group is expected to invest a lot of billions of euros of investments from third parties. So mainly related to renewables and e-transports and flexibility. And if someone can add something.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, with regards to the electrification, I just wanted to add that Enel is trying to be a leading company in the electrification of grids, and one of the main objectives is to increase the resiliency and efficiency of the electric grids. And just in terms of infrastructures, Enel is, as my colleagues mentioned, active in 31 countries, but it shares a good amount of the market share in electricity and gas distribution in Italy, in Iberian Peninsula, in Latin America, and in Romania. And in total, concerning electricity distributions, it reaches out to 70 million people, while in terms of gas distribution, it reaches 6 million customers. The data are for the year 2020. Thanks, and I think we have our last colleague that wants to point something.
Yeah, just something about investment and sustainability. I found that in 2019, Enel launched the world's first general purpose Sustainable Development Goals bonds, which invited the market to invest in sustainable achievements. And this was an important step because it has shown that investing in sustainability is an economic value. In fact, Enel invested like $1.5 billion bonds in the US market and 2.5 billion in the European market. And these investments were all linked to the Sustainable Development Goals in order to create sustainable cities for infrastructure, innovation, and to like combat climate change, and to create a grid of affordable and clean energy.
Hello, and thank you. So that was really a piece of teamwork here. You have all had a go in telling us what your findings were. Thank you very much. I can see, Simone, did you need to have your camera on? Or is it by accident?
I'm ready for my turn. I'm the next one, just for that.
I can't believe this. This is really teamwork. Wow, okay. Go for it then.
So we looked at E.ON Energy, which is a German company which has operations in Germany, UK, Europe, North America, Russia, Brazil, and Turkey. They serve businesses, public administrations, but also retail customers, like, for example, to powerhouses. And the different portfolios are made up by renewable energy, such as hydro, green hydrogen, nuclear, and solar energy, and wind energy, which is a very important business in the UK. And yeah, it serves a wide range of industries like manufacturing, hospitality and leisure, logistic industries, real estate, and so on. The two businesses of E.ON are generation of electricity and retail distribution. Just retail, while distribution and transmission are delegated to other companies. Future investments are going to refer to smart cities. Very important is a UK transition project which aims at curbing emissions within 2050, and other projects are meant to improve energy efficiency of buildings and energy storage. Concerning sustainability, we found that projects refer to energy efficiency, zero carbon emissions, electricity production out of 100% renewable sources, and interestingly, there was also anti-deforestation project in Italy called Boschi Project, a partnership with the United Nations Environmental Programme, and finally, we found also the Ensure project, which is a European-funded project about energy transition in Germany. What else? Another portfolio is about powering electric vehicles. I don't know exactly, like the power columns close to the streets. I don't know if it's the correct name. And nothing more. If my colleagues want to add something, go on. And thank you.
Okay, so not hearing anybody wanting to add anything more, but that's good. You guys have done the most thorough job I was ever expecting. That's good. Thank you very much for all the detail for the company of your choice. So shall we now move to what is next? To have Verbund next, or was that E.ON? I'm not sure. Sorry, is it Verbund that you have next?
Verbund is next. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, hello, I'm presenting Verbund, and Verbund is an Austrian company. In terms of market value, it's even the biggest Austrian company. That's $27.5 billion in 2021. So huge deal in Austria. And yeah, about 95% of the electricity generated by Verbund comes from renewable energy sources. More than 99% of that from hydropower, just like a friction and solar power. And it's, as I said, a big company with more than 2,700 employees, and 51% of the share capital is owned by the Republic of Austria, and therefore from the Austrian citizens and the Austrian government, the state. And yeah, there are 129 hydropower plants in Austria and Germany. And Verbund specializes not only in one aspect, they specialize in the generation of electricity, but also the transmission of electricity. And they trade electricity as a fact in 12 countries, most of or all of them in Europe, I guess. And the most biggest markets are Germany, France, and Italy. And they also don't only focus on one sector. They bring their electricity to industry, but also to private households and to small and medium-sized companies in Austria. And yeah, in Austria per se, nearly 65% of the electricity generation is covered by hydropower. And from this 65%, more than half is from Verbund hydropower plants. And they also have them in Bavaria. So most of them are in Austria and Bavaria, and the German state. And the fact that they brand themselves as very green and very climate friendly, but our group found some interesting aspects about greenwashing. Maybe other companies presented they're also involved in that. So they were criticized like 10 years ago for importing much of the electricity of nuclear power stations. So Greenpeace and other non-governmental organizations criticized them heavily 10 years ago, but I don't know in this aspect if it's still the case. But apart from electricity, they also produce natural gas. And in the natural gas market in Austria, I found some articles, they present themselves as very green, very bio-friendly, but as a matter of fact, it is not. It's a fossil fuel nonetheless. And it's like 50%, what they found in the articles, like a coal plant. So it's not that green, not that bio-friendly. And they're heavily criticized for that, especially for the branding by different non-governmental organizations and environmental activists. So I think that covers everything. If my group wants to add something, please have a go.
I think you said everything. So thank you.
Okay, you got the seal of approval from your team. That's good. Thank you very much. I will mention only about the greenwashing aspect that you said there. There's no doubt that all the energy companies, to some extent, at some point, could have been accused for greenwashing, and sometimes that's perfectly justifiable because they are sometimes greenwashing. Some other times it can be a matter of misunderstanding energy markets and how these operate and so on. I will leave this comment for a little bit later for us to look into a little bit more detail. I don't want to expand too much on this now. Should I ask the last team, which I realized was very small, but they've done a very brave job, talk to us about the last company for today, which is Vattenfall.
Yeah, hi
Double
everyone.
act. Yes, go for it.
Vattenfall is a large Swedish company with about 20,000 employees. Their main markets are Sweden, Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, and the UK. And they produce electricity from any type of energy, from hydropower to coal. But they are mainly focused on getting energy mainly from the wind. And they also have several installations around Europe. And then my mate is going on.
Yeah, they want to become fossil-free and so to reduce CO2 emissions to zero by 2035. And also by 2030, that is also the deadline of the agenda, they want to reduce emissions by 70% compared to 2017. To succeed in this, they are trying to innovate the way of producing electricity. And one of the best idea is the hybrid park that combine batteries, wind and solar. And so could be an idea to achieve this goal because they can accumulate a large quantity of energy.
Thank you very much. It was very good. Vattenfall is indeed a very active company in a very large number of fronts, and they do seem to be putting their hands into many pies, as they say here, because they like to engage with many types of industrial customers to help them decarbonize. I like a lot of the work they do, and I'll be telling you more about their innovations as we go on with this module. So thank you very much for that. So now what I have in my timing here is, I'm wondering, do you guys want to have a quick break? I don't know, to have a quick bite before we carry on? How do you feel? Or are you going to carry on? Well, I'm happy to do whatever you say. Is a break desirable?
Maybe we can just finish 10 minutes early and keep on with the lecture. I don't know.
I'm personally flexible. I'm happy to go with whatever the team wants. Who wants a break? Can I see a raise of hands for a break? We will go with whatever is most popular. Okay, so we are 50 people in this team. You guys have to do better if you want a break. If you don't, it's okay. It's fine. If not many people want a break and you'd rather finish a little bit earlier.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay, so I'm not seeing a huge demand for a break. So in the understanding that, you know, if you guys are going to go for a, you know, quick visit to the restroom or anything like that, you will do it anyway because we are going online. I will carry on with the class and we will finish earlier today to compensate you for the break so you can go and have your lunch as normal. So let's carry on. So that would be to say, so we finished with the first deck of slides and you already have a copy of that. So I'm content that this is okay with all of you. What I want to talk to you a little bit more about today in order to introduce a little bit more new materials. One first question will be to first investigate how you guys are doing with your coursework, because I'm getting a few of you contacting me about, you know, what you want to do in your coursework and your choice of country and type of energies, and that's really good. But there are many others also of whom I haven't heard at all. So is everything going all right? Are there any first level questions you want to ask? Anything we need to resolve? Or it's too early yet and you haven't managed to get any work done? It's fine. I totally understand if that's the case. Yeah, okay. So I'm not seeing a lot of interest in that. Let's drop it. And instead, let me share my next deck of slides with you, which will be so that is, come on Teams. It's this one. Can you see my slides now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
good. That worked for the first time. Come on, that was good. So what we have here is an opportunity for us to take a quick look. I'll move you directly. Did anybody say something? I had a bit of noise. No? All okay. So it's an opportunity for us to go through a little bit aspects of electricity trade. So one thing to understand is that electricity in a liberalized and privatized market is a tradable commodity. So it's not something which is seen as a public good in the sense that a state utility makes sure that you all have electricity in our houses. It's not that anymore. We've moved into a situation where we have electricity as a tradable commodity, and there are various ways in which that trade happens. It's important for us that we're trying to learn about sustainability and the transition to net zero. It's quite important to understand what electricity trade looks like. And the reason is that when we understand that, then we'll be able to tell exactly where renewable energy sources might have a better fit, might be able to play a role in that market, where they might be most profitable, or when, for example, there might be a bad idea. So that's what I will try to explain very briefly today and get you a little bit into that world of electricity trade. It's a profession on its own. It's similar to trading in the stock market in many ways. It sounds a little bit like commodity trading in a way, but it has, as every commodity really, electricity has also its own peculiarities, and there are specialized trading bureaus that are dealing with electricity transactions. So let's see a little bit the main market segments that are out there, and there are by no means only these ones. Yeah, there are many others, but these are, let's say, the types of market segments that are available. So the standard one that you often hear of is the spot market. Now, the spot market is the type of market that you have continuous change of pricing. So there are specific intervals which are set out by the regulator, and there is a market clearance every one on the closing cycle of these intervals. Yeah, so typically these can be like 30 minutes, but that's not mandatory. There are markets which have intervals in 1 hour. There are market intervals which have breaks at 5 minutes. So they, there's a range really of what exists out there. Why do we have these differences, and what is the spot market? What does it do? Do you have a feel of that?
No.
And why do we have changes in these intervals? Why do we have intervals of 5 minutes and of 60 minutes, for example? Any thoughts on that? Not really. Okay, let me get you a little bit back to what we were saying earlier on, that electricity as a tradable commodity is something that cannot be stored very well. So even though technically there are ways to store electricity, in reality, there isn't out there a great availability of these systems to store large amounts of electricity. So that means that we need to be trading electricity quite all the time. So we need to have a matching of supply and demand happening relatively frequently to make sure that there is actually a proper match. So these 30 minutes intervals that I have here, what they normally do is that the regulator has a forecast of what the demand will be in the next half-hour segment. And then it goes out and it says we need 10 gigawatt hours of electricity in the next half hour. And then there are various suppliers which have power stations which can come forward and say, hi, for that next half hour, I can offer with my nuclear power station, I can offer a set price. I can offer maybe 3 gigawatts of power for that period for a price of 50 for a price of 50 euros per megawatt hour, for example. That would be a typical offer. And then once all the market players have put their bids in, so they have put in their pricing and their ability to offer a specific amount of energy in place, once they've done that, then the trading bureau will have to rank them based on price. So the cheapest ones will be the ones that will go into the market necessarily and will be able to trade their energy immediately. But also there will be others which are coming afterwards, and they might be more expensive, which won't be allowed to trade their energy. So it depends on the ranking order that every provider is. So there is a point, imagine if the first provider offers energy at a cheap price and they can offer, say, 1 gigawatt, and the second one offers another 1 gigawatt, and maybe, by the 10th provider will have covered the demand of 10 gigawatts, then there's a point where the 11th more expensive company in the ranking order, whatever they offer, it won't be taken. Nobody wants it anymore. So they will not be able to secure a market for their electricity. So that's why companies are incentivized in a way to give as low a price as they can in order to be able to get into there and be among the lower cost suppliers. So that's the incentive of the spot market. Now, typically companies that play in the spot market are the ones which, first of all, to begin with, companies normally don't play in the spot markets all of their energy. They will take in the spot market a percentage of their energy. And the same goes for the regulator, that normally they will not try to procure all of their electricity demand in the spot market. Probably they will just try to get in the spot market only a small amount of the total amount of energy that they need for that hour, or for that 30 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever the segment is. The reason for that is that there is volatility there, that things can go wrong. You might be able to exploit a very low price if, for example, like today in the UK, there is a lot of wind. So you could be able, in theory, to achieve, cheap wind energy coming on board, or you might be able to get, very expensive prices if there is no availability of cheap energy. Now, typically, what types of energy would you imagine are the ones which would be characterized as the lowest cost in this spot market? What is your guess? Which might be the technologies which can offer the cheapest electricity, and why?
I would say tools that can be produced, from these sources where energy can be produced in a short amount of time. As you were mentioning about wind, it depends on the climate of the day. So I would say starting a nuclear reactor for just with a 30-minute, it would be very difficult. So it depends a lot of what kind of energy source the energy companies providing and planning to use.
Correct. So that is a good way of thinking about it. What can be responsive? That's one thing. What else might be another characteristic for us to look at when we're thinking of the lowest cost possible to play in the spot market? Any ideas?
Maybe location.
What about it?
Where is the house plant? Maybe there is a connection or no?
Okay, let's assume that all of these things are sorted. Let's keep fingers crossed that these things are sorted. The location and the transmission. You mean that there is potential for the energy to actually be able to arrive where it should arrive?
Yeah.
Let's assume that this is doable. that there is no congestion, as they say, in the cables. So let me give you a hint
Could it
here.
have something to do?
Sorry, yes, say it.
Could it have something to do with the technology involved? You know, like
Absolutely.
perhaps the age of the technology.
Yes, let me get with that. So what you're normally looking for is types of generation that essentially have zero marginal cost. Yeah. So for example, wind energy or solar energy, they cost nothing to be produced. Yeah. If I will produce today, 1 megawatt hour of solar power or 3, it costs me exactly the same. I'm not burning anything. I'm not using any consumables. I don't have to buy any solar radiation or anything like that. Yeah. So there is no difference whatsoever in how much I have there. So if there is sun available that day, if there is wind available that day, then these guys can get in and sell energy even for zero. It doesn't matter for them. There is no price at which they will take a loss. It's
Professor,
the opposite.
what about
from where you have, for example, to burn gas to produce electricity. So then for every unit of electricity you produce, you have to pay for the gas that you burn to produce it. So it's a little bit different there. I think somebody tried to say something, and I didn't hear it very well.
Yeah, I was wondering, I mean, wouldn't, if you can store what's coming on the market and then sell it at a spot rate, right? Wouldn't that be, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be necessarily the cheapest, but that would be the best opportunity to turn a profit, right? Because you can buy while it's the cheapest, right? When there's the least demand, and then you can just sell it out on the spot market whenever the prices go up. And then one other question I had was, so what happens if you mentioned, each of the sellers, selling a gigawatt, right? And lining up to sell. What happens if the seller, if there's a seller that can't unload all of its capacity, right? If it can't sell all of it on its market, what happens in that case?
Okay, let's go one by one. So first thing was, wouldn't it be a good idea if a supplier can store energy and then sell it whenever there is demand? So there are a couple of things to consider here. Storage is not something that we have in abundance when it comes to electricity. It's not so easy to store a lot of electricity. You can store small amounts, but really storing, significant amounts that would cover, a few gigawatt hours of power, that's not straightforward. For most technologies that we have, some countries have a lot of capacity in reversible hydropower. These are essentially the only countries that can store a lot of energy. For most other countries, most other technologies, there is not much hope to store a lot of energy. I mean, there is growth in batteries and discussions about large-scale hydrogen and so on, but none of these technologies is ready today to store a lot of electricity. We grow them, but like I said, there's less potential in that sense, let alone doing this in a profitable way. Yeah. So it does take very specific market circumstances in which these types of technologies can enter. And I will explain this a little bit more now. So if you're looking for what we'd call, seasonal storage, that's really only hydro at the moment. It's really only reversible hydropower stations. If you're looking for spot market, higher frequency transactions, so for example, if you're looking at the Californian spot market, which has segments of 5 minutes, that is a little bit different there, because for 5 minutes, even if you don't have the most enormous batteries ever, you might have batteries which are able to start up, produce energy for 5 minutes, give a big injection of power into the grid, stabilize it for 5 minutes, and then get off it. So if the price is right, then they can do that, earn a healthy profit, and then go back and wait until they can be recharged when the electricity price is lower. So it depends on where you're playing. Yeah? If you're looking at short intervals, very short intervals, batteries in certain markets have been incentivized enough. If you're looking for larger intervals, say about an hour or something like that, then it's very unlikely. that you will see a lot of batteries. You might see some batteries, and you do see them in some markets in Australia and in California, and increasingly in the UK as well. But you wouldn't have them covering, 10% of the country's demand for a couple of hours. That's a bit unrealistic at the moment. So that's that part. We're getting there, but not yet. The other thing you said was, I forgot what was the second question. Tell me what was the second question.
It was talking about when you have excess capacity, right? And you're not able to sell off, all your production. What happens in that case? Because I know that, like for instance, pricing algorithms in Texas for like Texas wind, they turn negative sometimes when there's too much power coming on the grid, and so producers are actually losing money by operating.
Correct. So there are two things that are happening in these cases. One is that you will have, so if you're a supplier that produces regardless, so for example, wind energy supplier, you might have that the algorithm, exactly as you said, could return negative pricing, and that can happen not just in Texas, it can happen in other places. It happens in Germany, in Denmark, in the UK, it has happened at some points in the past. So it does take a lot of renewable energy generation for this to happen, and lack of capacity to absorb that energy. So for example, you could have an extremely windy night, let's say, in the UK, an extremely windy, relatively warm night. So less heating on, less needs for lighting and all of that. So anyways, low consumption because it's winter, because it's summertime and it's not so much in demand. But then it's a very windy night, so suddenly the wind turbines produce so much energy that nobody wants it. In these cases, you might have a part of a negative pricing, which helps with a little bit of more energy to be absorbed from the market. But in reality, there will always be what we call energy curtailments. So that is that essentially you cannot absorb that energy and you just ground it. So technically, you either apply the brakes on wind turbines, or you disconnect them from the system, or you ground the energy that they have produced. So it can happen. There are all sorts of these levels that can occur. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was asking. Thank you very much.
You don't want, typically you don't want a lot of energy to end up in the negative territory, but it does happen. The funny thing is, I can tell you that, the funny thing is that these negative prices in the wholesale market sometimes end up passing through into the retail market. So I've had friends over the last couple of years who had the retail tariff being connected to the spot market. So they selected a retail tariff which essentially tracks with every half hour, tracks the spot market price and gives them a function of that spot market price. So that is good if you can adjust your consumption during the day, if you can move most of your consumption at your house overnight, where electricity is very cheap, then probably you will have amazingly cheap electricity at home. But if you cannot adjust it, and if you, need to have a lot of consumption during the day when prices are higher, then you could end up paying more. But there are customers who can benefit from that if they have flexible demands at their house. So I've had friends who, because of, they had electric cars, which they were charging overnight. So for them, it made sense to have a flexible tariff that would allow them to make use of the night tariffs. And there were instances in which they were paid to charge their cars in order to be able to absorb more energy from the grid. So it does happen, and it does go all the way to consumers sometimes. What's clear is that as we're growing in electricity demand, we should be able, electricity demand plus flexibility of when that demand actually occurs. For example, with an electric car, you can choose when you will charge it, really. It doesn't matter if you charge it exactly when you come back home from work, at 5 o'clock, or if you charge it, at 2 o'clock at night. Yeah, there's no, most people wouldn't care about that. They would charge it whenever it's cheapest. So if there is the right price signaling coming along and lets you know when is the right time to do it, then most people would choose whenever it's cheaper, clearly. So that's what we're seeing there. The more we introduce flexible types of consumption into the system, the more we will be able to absorb these types of events. But at the same time, of course, we're introducing more and more renewables into the system. So it's a fine balance then between the two. Does that make sense? Are you covered?
Yes, thank you. That was that was exactly what I was looking for.
Okay. Any other questions to the spot market segment before I move you to the next ones? No. Okay. So there's also then the spot market, but it's called the spot day ahead market. Yeah. So again, that includes tradable contracts, but the delivery time for the energy is the the next day. So you trade the contracts today in the understanding that energy will be available tomorrow. So that's a different type of contract that allows the regulators to hedge ahead of the next day, have some of the main producers to commit to their supply in the next day, and so on. They're, again, relatively useful contracts. They can serve a very specific part of market planning for the next day. Then it's what we call capacity market. So the capacity market, or even power market, you might hear it sometimes. So what these guys do in the capacity markets is essentially, it's a security market. So what you do there is you try to contract producers to be available for production if they're needed. Yes, so you might, for example, say, right, okay, I have sorted out my contracts for tomorrow, but because I've contracted mostly wind energy and solar energy to cover all of my demand tomorrow, or at least a large part of my demand tomorrow, maybe I need to contract a couple of gas power stations or a couple of nuclear power stations to make sure that they can enter the market if they need to. Maybe they will enter the market or not. It might happen or it might not happen. But I will pay them anyway, because what I pay them for is the fact that from, say, from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the afternoon, when demand is very high, they will be readily available. If I tell them, hey, you need to enter the market now because we have a shortage, then they will be able to do so and not allow the power grid to go into a blackout. Yeah. So that is what you pay them for. So that's kind of an insurance premium that you pay there for that. Does it make sense? It's like a spare capacity that is there. You might need it or not. Is it something, do you understand the concept there?
Yeah, it's like a sort of backup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. So you need to create the right incentives. You need to create the right systems to allow market players to want to do that. Not everybody will want to do it, but it is a way of securing the market and not having things collapsing if things go wrong. Now, last year I have the PPAs. These are the power purchase agreements. That's what a PPA is. It's a power purchase agreement. Now, what you have with those, these are typically, they're not anything like a short-term thing of a day or two or a few hours, even worse. They're normally contracts which are very long-term. So you're looking for years. So typically you will hear things like, a company, a developer is building a wind farm, and maybe through a PPA, they will manage to contract all of the electricity they will produce to somebody who's a consumer. So there might be completely bilateral contracts that will allow for this type of transaction. That consumer might be a factory, might be a huge office block or whatever of that sort. So for example, a few years ago, maybe it was, I think 2 or 3 years ago, something like that, a consortium of universities in the UK have contracted a very large wind farm off in Scotland to provide them with electricity, all of their electricity demand for the next 10 years. Yeah, so that is the type of contracts you have. Or Google has been in the past, and Facebook has also done the same. They have been in the past making such contracts with wind farms across the US to have sort of, long-term 10, 15 years agreements for electricity supply. So these are contracts essentially which they will not fluctuate in the day or in the night or when demand is low and demand is high. They have none of that. The other thing that they have is that they're not necessarily contracts where you're looking to match demand and supply when they happen, yeah? So quite often, these contracts are not materialized on a like-for-like energy supply. So for example, it's not always the case that electricity will flow from the specific wind farm that it has it all the way to your consumer. It might not be like that, yeah? What's usually the case is that electricity will be flowing from a wind farm to the grid, and then logistically, from an energy accounting point of view, what you want to make sure is that through an accounting period, which might be, a day or a month or a week or a year or many years, who knows, that you want to guarantee that all the electricity that that organization has consumed has been equal over a large period of time to the energy that they have purchased from that supplier, maybe that wind farm. Yeah, does that make sense? So it's not necessarily that you try to match it simultaneously. Is it okay? Do you understand that? Or is it complicated? I could explain more on that. That's why I'm asking you. Sounds like it's clear to all of you. Okay. So these are the typical types of contracts that you see in the electricity markets. Now, typically renewables are best placed with long-term contracts. Yeah, so PPAs are the best possible, most profitable type of contract that renewables can play a role in. And why is that the case? It is the case because it sets them free from the need to match demand and supply, instantaneously all the time, which is something which renewables cannot do very well if they're not supported by storage or other systems. If they're just left there by themselves, that is something which they might struggle on. So most of the renewable energy contracts end up giving ridiculously low prices when you allow them to go for PPAs. Because an energy investor, they literally go there, spend enough money to build the wind farm or the solar farm or whatever, but then the running costs are so low that they can actually, if they know they're going to sell all of their energy to one customer for 10 years, that from a financial point of view, it's an insane, provides an insane level of de-risking the investment. Yeah, so it removes the risk, which means that they can access capital a lot easier. They can do, very interesting things, which results in them allowing contracts of very low prices. So that's where you often see renewable energy sources being contracted for very low pricing. On the contrary, when you're looking, for example, spot market day ahead or even longer intervals day ahead, like many days ahead, for example, the renewables might struggle because they cannot necessarily commit to what they will be able to sell the next day. They can make a prediction because you have weather forecasts and you have technological forecasting there, and you can make an assessment on how much energy you will be able to produce tomorrow from your wind farm. It's not completely random because we know pretty well how the weather is going to be, but we don't know to a super fine level of detail. So sometimes the day ahead they might struggle. Similarly, they might struggle with capacity markets. Yeah, renewables are quite bad with entering the capacity market because they cannot be 100% guaranteed capacity. So if anything goes wrong, I don't know, if there is suddenly lack of wind and they have committed to providing capacity and they're needed in the market and they cannot do it, then there are crazy fines from the regulators, so they don't want to do that. Spot market, again, with these short intervals, renewables can usually play a significant role because it's quite, you know a lot better what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes or in the next half hour of your electricity supply. So you can commit to that level of time, and again give a good price and get high up in the ranking order of the potential suppliers there. So typically in the spot market, you see a lot of electricity players, a lot of renewable electricity players stealing the lunch from from fossil fuels. Yeah, fossil fuels are going bankrupt in the spot market. It's very difficult for them to compete, as it is, of course, impossible for them to compete in the PPAs. So that's really a very rough picture of what the trade systems might look like. Have we got any questions so far?
Yeah, I was wondering about one thing, because you talk a lot about the link between storage and renewables, that renewables really need storage in order to be like a complete system, because of their peaks in their supply. And I was wondering, when you look from a global or maybe a European market perspective currently, how is the balance between renewable supply and storage? Is there enough storage already for renewables to be able to use all their energy, or does it often happen that you have to tap on the brake with the turbines, like you said as well?
Oh yeah. No, unfortunately not. No, we have nothing like enough storage in Europe. And really, we have nothing like enough storage in most of the world. It's not just Europe. Typically, when you're looking for large-scale storage, like I said before, it's hydropower systems that you're looking for. Some countries, imagine in Europe right now, the countries that have significant hydropower capacity are the ones that have enough water. So what you're looking for enough water resources. So, significant rivers, typically, that can create lakes. And the other one is mountains. So you want these lakes to be able to be located at high altitude, so that then you can have a lot of energy stored, because it's really proportionate to the altitude you can go to. So that's typically countries like, Norway has a good capacity for that, an excellent capacity, one would say. Switzerland, Austria, France, so that around the Alps countries, really. Northern Italy could do something better, but it's not, it is okay, but it could do better, in my opinion, Northern Italy. Spain has a little bit of capacity, but again, I think it could do better. Portugal is doing great in that area. So it's not equal to all countries. Yeah, for example, Germany doesn't have almost anything. It's a very flat country in relation to what they can provide with pumped hydro. The UK is almost zero. We have just a couple of small stations that can do that stuff. So I would say that it's very unequally distributed depending on where you look in the continent. I would say, of course, it's a challenge. Yeah? You cannot always, imagine the very large hydropower stations that we have in Switzerland and in France and in Austria, which are some of the biggest in the world. So imagine picking up those systems and making them 100% reversible and interconnecting them to the whole continent. That could be a very interesting energy project to think of. That you're making an ecosystem that has been created around this power stations. You're going to make it an industrial site. So it's not necessarily the easiest decisions to be taken in every country. There is money to be made in these instances, because there is demand for that kind of storage. It's no secret that, for example, Norway, which has one of the highest shares of reversible hydropower stations in the world by any standard, is using it not so much for their own sake. They use it much more for other countries. So Norway is Germany's and Denmark's and Sweden's battery, essentially. Yeah. So if you see the amount of trade that is going on there instantaneously, depending on what Denmark is doing with their with their wind farms, they might be selling energy to Norway or buying energy from Norway. It happens all the time, multiple times a day. You see these flows being circulating around. For me, the question is, how do we do this at a larger scale, not just between Denmark and Norway, but how can we move energy from, I don't know, from Poland to Spain? How can we enhance these larger connections going on? I think gradually we will be seeing a lot of that. What I often say in these classes is that the time where we used to spend subsidy money on advancing renewables and installing more wind farms and more solar farms, I think the time is over. There is no interest anymore in solar subsidies or wind subsidies, because the technologies have become so advanced now that they don't need subsidies. They can be installed without anything. But now we need subsidies for cables. We need to be able to transfer energy from parts of the continent to the other, and of course grow storage a lot more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So, other questions this far? No? Okay. So I'll make one more point here before I set you free, and that would be based on that particular discussion we just had a second ago with your colleague. When it comes to storage, there is also this other element of storage, which is not seasonal storage. Yes? So it's one thing to need energy for, I don't know, say for 20 days when there is not enough wind. It's very rarely necessary to need so much for so long, but it can happen. And it's a completely different story to need energy for 5 minutes. Yes, so quite often in the process of stabilizing the electricity grid, when I say stabilizing, I mean in the process of making sure that demand is equal to supply all the time. In that process, you often need significant power injections, but for a very short time, sometimes for less than 5 minutes, sometimes for a few seconds. And that allows you to make sure that the power in the system is always exactly accurately correct, and it allows a very healthy electricity system, that power is safely distributed and so on. And there's a lot of that necessity going on in pretty much every country. For that kind of work, stationary batteries at different countries and different states tend to take over. That's what batteries can do best, because their capacity to respond to demand is ridiculously fast. So they can respond to load demand in milliseconds. So they can make sure that power is adjusted all the time and it's perfectly balanced and all of that. So for balancing services, batteries, I would say, are already solving the problem. And they're much faster and much more economical than, for example, running gas power stations to do that, which is what has been happening in the past. Yeah? Most of our balancing technologies in the past has been running them with gas. Now it's mostly solar and wind plus batteries. So you only see the battery really interfacing with the system, with the grid. The solar and wind are just charging the battery, and they charge it any time they can. And then the battery has enough energy to be able to provide these very short injections of electricity when it's needed. But yeah, when you're looking for long-term storage, hydrogen maybe, we'll see how things play out. And maybe batteries if we end up having enormous scale of batteries, but that's not yet. Might take a few years or a decade, who knows. So that's that in terms of these combinations. I'll be talking to you more on Wednesday about how certain renewables can deal with certain aspects of these networks. So we'll carry on the conversation on, when is it? On Wednesday at 3 o'clock? Yes, Wednesday at 3 o'clock Italian time. Until then, have a good afternoon. Have a good next couple of days. See you soon. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.